Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to our London system series. So in this series we're following this very nice opening from a white's perspective, and today we're continuing again the London system with the so-called Vaganian Gambit. The Vaganian Gambit is usually a line of the Trompovsky attack, but you can use it of course also in the London system. It's a pragmatic idea. I think we have a great attacking possibility when we give up the pawn on b2. I've explained it also in my previous videos. In order to get a better understanding of this video, please also watch my previous London system videos in which I've explained some already some ideas of the Vaganian Gambit. So let's check out now one great game. It was suggested to me by one of my great viewers under the name Corteum 9000. He texted me this game. It was again in the Vaganian Gambit. It was, I think, a very instructive game, and you see now the trouble again that black can have when black simply takes the pawn, the poison pawn on b2. So let's check out what happened. It was a great game played by the Alpha Sub-Zero engine against another top engine, Rybka, and this is really attacking brilliancy by Alpha Sub-Zero. I couldn't find really even some great counter attacks for black. It's such a great opening, this Vaganian Gambit. It's such a pleasant, I think, for the eye also, because we can simply attack the position with a huge piece activity. We get such a great also pawn central control. I think this line you should really use in order to beat this early c5 and follow with queen to b6 ideas by black. So let's check out now the game. d4 played by Alpha Sub-Zero, knight to f6 by Rybka. We have bishop to f4, the accelerated London, and after c5 my suggestion was also to simply proceed here with the move d5, going into Benoni structures, because black will eventually have to play this move d6 and will try to fix the position well, then try g6, bishop to g7, and then with a6 b5, as I've explained before, to create some kind of an attack here on the queen side. So we're analyzing again this line. I think this line is very popular also for white, also for black, so we should be really a master in this particular line. My suggestion is simply to go knight to c3, simply sacrificing the pawn like Alpha Sub-Zero did here. We have queen to b2, bishop to d2, also suggested in my previous videos, and after queen to b6 we're playing e4. After d6 now comes also a very important move, f4, and this is now our cornerstone basically of the attack. We have now a great piece activity. Knight is out, bishop is out, bishop has a good diagonal, the knight on f3 will come on a natural square. We have opportunities to play rook to b1, and we have opportunities to play e5. So we have also in some occasions even possibilities to play h3 g4. So I think we have a great flexibility in the attack. We have a great activity. So for the pawn, I think it's a great compensation. So queen to d8 will be also very often played. We have now bishop to b5 by the Alpha Sub-Zero engine, knight to d7, a4, a6, bishop to e2, and now after g6 now we should play of course knight to f3 with even preparations to play the move e5 now immediately would be very risky, because after d takes e5, f takes e5, then knight to g4 could happen and our pawn on e5 could be in danger. So e5 so far is not possible, but as a long-term plan it could work. So here bishop to g7, castling simply, and now after castling now comes, I think, again a new strategical and tactical element. It's the move queen to e1, and that's a setup I think we should memorize. Now the queen will sneak in here to h4 with the support of the knight to g5. We can also attack the weak h7. Then maybe it would be time to somehow deflect one of these knights from the defense of the h7 and simply trying to get our attack around that square. Also, I think we should always memorize something in these types of ideas. When you have pushed the pawn on a4, and I've talked about this position now for a long time, also before sleeping yesterday. I went to sleep, then I couldn't stop to think about this game, and I couldn't stop think about the London system. It's simply how I function. I simply sometimes before I go to sleep I think about positions. I wanted to tell you something. It didn't appear here, but I think you should always notice that when you have pushed here the pawn on a4, sometimes as I said, it didn't happen here. It didn't happen here, but sometimes you should try some rook lifts. Rook to h3 followed with rook to h3, or rook to f3, rook to h3. But the cool part is actually that we could also shift our rook here from a3 to h3. So you see how this this Vaganian Gambit is really a cool opening, because you can really use some great activities with all of your pieces. We still have 4 minor pieces on the board. We still have the queens on the board. We still have the 2 rooks on the board. So you can really use them all over the board, and still with opportunities, of course, to play the move e5. Now, as I said, queen to e1 comes with the natural idea to go here queen to h4, knight to g5, and maybe in some occasions even some rook sacrifices are possible. Again, this will not happen in this game. For instance, if this knight goes maybe to b6, let's imagine a position knight to b6, then maybe the f file gets opened. Then of course, after knight to g5, queen to h4, some rook sacrifices are possible, because rook to f6, after maybe e takes or bishop to f6, we could even try then maybe a checkmate on h7. So I think we have great attacking opportunities in this positions. Here queen to c7 was played by Rybka, and now f5. F5 is really great, because if you take here g takes f5, then knight to h4 will happen, and knight to h4 is very risky for black, because after knight to e4 we have basically accomplished what we wanted. We wanted to deflect at least one of these knights from the defense of the king. Knight to f5, maybe knight to c3, bishop to c3, but still I think this knight is very annoying. We can attack here after bishop takes c3, maybe something like queen to c3, and now black is even forced to lock somehow the position with knight to e5. But still, as we said, we can use simply our rook activity here, rook to f3, rook to g3, and similar ideas in order to attack the position. So here after move f5, you could also try rook to b8 in order to maybe counterattack here on the queen side. Now again, we're playing simply a queen to h4, maybe c4 could happen. And now what I don't recommend you is to play the move g4. G4 I think would many of us play in order to attack further with g5, but don't do it, because as I said, I took my time, I've analyzed the position. G4 is not so good, because there is one problem. You have lost a little bit the connection between the queen and the pawn, and sometimes this pawn could endanger with knight to c5 ideas. Then the e4 could be hanging, so this could be an idea. But also what black could do is simply to make progress here on the queen side with b5. Here you could try maybe g5, but knight to h5 will happen. So far the knight is not endangered. I think white's attack here is a little bit splashed, and now black can simply proceed with normal ideas of b4. Black can also try queen to c5 with a dangerous check. So I don't think this is the line that you should use. So what black here after the move, as we said, after the move c4, what we could do actually is here f takes g6. F takes g6 is perfectly fine, because now after h takes queen to c5, maybe then h takes g6, now comes our main attacking motif, as we said, knight to g5. And now we should notice that what black has here as a problem is that both of these knights are stuck there. That's the main issue, and that's the line that you should memorize. So don't go into h3, g4 further attacks with the pawns. Now we should really use our piece activity. The problem is now, as we said, if this knight moves to b6, then rook to f6 is an immediate threat with queen to h7. Also, this knight cannot move somewhere else, because again you get here checkmated on h7. What black could do is maybe to create some kind of a breathing space, because now knight to g6, if knight to b6 if happens, and then if we play rook to f6, then of course after something like e takes f6, then queen to h7 doesn't work, because king to f8 will happen, and then you don't have anymore the queen to h8 move. You don't have checkmate threats. But what we could do is further paralyze black's position with the move a5. This wasn't played in the game. I just wanted to show you some lines. Now a5 really paralyzes the whole position. I don't see now good ways how black should make progress here. If black plays now here the move b5, then we can simply take en passant, and you see now after rook to rook to b4, rook takes b6, we have a fork knight to a4, or if black takes out with the knight here, knight to b6, then we can play a very cool move, e5. This is a move that you should memorize, because black has now to react. If black takes now, knight takes d5, you see, because the knight was hanging, then we have queen to h7 followed with rook to f7. So if you take here d takes e5, then we can simply play here knight from c to e4. We're again deflecting the knight from the defense, and now maybe the black queen can go to d7. But here we have again this idea, rook to f6. We have here maybe e takes f6, then knight to f6 comes with a check, because now after bishop to f6, queen to h7 and king to f8, here we have an important now move, bishop to b4. And bishop to b4 wins the game immediately, because you have to bring something in between the bishop, or maybe here even the rook, but now queen takes f7 is a checkmate. So this e5 move, I think, is the stunner. Let's go back. So this e5 breaks really the position. It gives us now a huge activity here around the square e4. That's, I think, a great attack. You see, for instance, if this knight moves to b6, but the more important thing was first this move a5, which paralyzed the position, and you see now black is simply lost here. We should even search now maybe for opportunities of rook to f3, rook to h3, and similar ideas. Rook to maybe here rook to a4 followed with rook to c4 is also an opportunity. So I think this position gives us really some great attacking opportunities. You see the problems. Let's go back after b5, 8 takes b6, knight takes b6, and now comes the stunner, as I said, e5. e5 here, knight takes d5, it's immediately lost. If you try d takes e5, let's repeat again, knight to e4, very cool move. Rook to f6, you see how dangerous this attack can be. Really beautiful chess. So here that was our continuation after f5, and I think we have solved now the problems here in the game. That was the continuation after rook to e8. I'm sorry if I'm complicating things, but I just wanted to show you some great attacking opportunities here after the move. Instead of this move rook to e8, Rybka tried knight to e8, but again we can use now this moment, queen to h4, we have knight to e5, and now we can play this move g4, because now the knight is not there anymore. The knight will never get there anymore, because black has already lost the tempo. So we know that chess is all about tempi. When you lose them, you will probably lose the game. So this knight to e8 was also an unnecessary move. c4, we have king to h1, and now after queen to c5, we have again this idea, a5, very important. Never allow this b pawn to get connected with the c pawn. So then black could use here a pawn majority, a 2 versus 1 situation on the queen side. Could also use some attacks with the pawns against this knight on c3. Then we'll push further, maybe even with b3 or maybe even with c3. So it's then a bad game for white. a5 stops, of course, black's progress on the queen side. We have now bishop to d7, rook to b1, rook to b8, and now knight takes e5, simply getting rid of another defender of the king. Bishop takes e5, and now comes our main goal, rook to f3, with the idea of playing rook to h3. In the game, bishop to f6, attacking the queen. Now g5, bishop to d4, and now after f takes g6, we have h takes g6, and now it's time for you to solve this tactics. It's time for you to solve this puzzle a little bit. Try to see now the best continuation here for white. It's of course obvious what we are trying to do. We're trying to play the move rook to h3, followed with rook to queen to h7, delivering a checkmate. So pause the video and try to see now really the best continuation here for white. Okay. I hope you could find this move, because it's a great deflection motif. What we want to do is to get rid of at least one of these bishops as defensive piece, because this bishop is defending, of course, here our long diagonal on dark squares. This bishop is protecting this long diagonal, but the most important thing is that this bishop is protecting the h3 square. So now we could use this deflection, knight to a4. If you take, of course, then you get simply rook to h3. There's nothing that can be done, so it's a lost game here for black. So in order to make something, black is simply forced to play queen to c8, because now we want also to have a protection with the queen here. And in the game here, Alpha Sub-Zero played the move knight to b6, bishop to b6, and now bishop to c3. You see now this bishop get deflected from this diagonal, and now we can use new attacking opportunities. Bishop to c3, great attack by Alpha Sub-Zero. We have f6, we have g takes f6, rook to f6, we have a takes b6, and now bishop to g4, but now rook takes f6, knight to f6, bishop to f6. Again, we're threatening here queen to h8, queen to g7. So in the game here, e takes f6 was played, but now bishop to g4. It's now completely, of course, winning for white. White is up a whole piece. We have now g5, queen to h3, queen to f8, and now rook to b4, f5, bishop to f5, queen to f6, rook takes c4, king to f8, and now after rook to c7, in this position Rybka resigned. So really wild stuff. I hope you enjoyed this game. It was a little bit complicated. I really wanted to show you some lines. It was, I think, very important for me to show it to you, because these lines will happen to you probably if you're playing here this so-called Vaganian Gambit with this poison pawn variation, simply giving up the pawn on b2. You saw the problems of blacks. We have a huge activity. I think what we should notice here is this position where we're simply paralyzing the pieces. So we should take, as I said, f takes g6 here, queen to c5, so knight to g5. We're threatening at least something here around the square h7, and our main strategical goal here first is to paralyze the queen side with the move a5, and then this e5 move, I think, is the stunner, followed with knight to e4, deflecting simply these pieces from the defense of the king with the support of the bishop pair. With this very active queen, I think you can have really great attacking opportunities. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game like I did. I really enjoyed it a lot. It was a great and theoretical game for us to see in this very cool line. If you want to see more games from the London system and also some other studies of this very nice opening, please check my series from the beginnings, from introduction video, part 1, part 2, part 3, and so on. And if you want to have some good openings as black, check out my hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense series and my Nimzo Indian defense series, has good responses against e4 and d4. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.